I want to welcome everyone here. I'd like you all to please take your seats, fasten your seat belts, and turn off your cell phones and personal devices. They interfere with the running of the aircraft. If you must, put them on vibrate and enjoy. My name is Bert Visotsky. I am the Appelman Professor of Midrash and Interreligious Studies here at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and it is truly my honor and delight to welcome you to this evening, one of the many book evenings that's run by the library of the Jewish Theological Seminary, which still likes books. JTS, as you may well know, is the largest aggregate of Jewish studies faculty in the Western world. We're very proud of the fact that we have a great body of students, scholars, and especially our illustrious alumni, many of whom are sitting here tonight. But you didn't come to hear about that. You came to hear our friend Naomi Levy. Rabbi Naomi Levy. Everyone who just clapped is from California. Is the founder and spiritual leader of Nashuva, a groundbreaking Jewish outreach organization based in Los Angeles. I have to say, because I have not had the opportunity to pray at Nashuva, but I have with Nashuva, since they are online and you can find them and watch Naomi with the band behind her teach you how to pray. Naomi Levy has been listed as one of the 50 most influential Jewish leaders in the nation by The Forward, and Newsweek listed her among the top 50 rabbis in America. I personally put her among my top 10. She graduated Cornell, come on, Cornell, where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude, and she was in the very first class of women to enter JTS's rabbinical school. I have known Naomi for about 25 years now, and it is truly one of the great friendships that I cherish, and I will say it very publicly. Naomi disappointed me when she was ordained because I begged her, I practically got on my knees, please stay and do a doctorate. But she knew what she wanted to do, and she has done it incredibly well. She was first a rabbi in Venice, California, where she rebuilt a synagogue into a vibrant community, and then, after enormous success there, left to write and be with her family. Her first book, To Begin Again, became a national bestseller, and it gave Naomi every writer's fantasy. She was on Oprah. And apropos of that, if everyone looks under their seat right now, her second book, which to me was a signally important book, is called Talking to God, in which Naomi, steeped as she is all her life in Jewish and rabbinic tradition, understood that despite that, the liturgy does not always address the exigencies of our daily lives. And she essentially wrote a prayer book of prayers that speak to the modern heart. And I say this with all deference to Naomi, who is my friend, she was my student, she is my colleague, but in so many ways she is my rabbi, that it is a book that I'm exhorting you, even though we're not selling it here tonight, go home, get it online, it will teach you how to pray. Her third book, Hope Will Find You, is a personal journey, one that I have read now twice through and cried both times. The first time because I know Naomi so well and was reading about her personal journey, and she's my friend, and it was moving. The second time, when I just read it bound, I cried because it's such a beautiful book, and it's one that we're privileged to have. So without any further ado, I want to introduce my friend, Naomi Levy.
I was really worried tonight because I felt like, oh my God, I'm speaking at the seminary. This could be a little stuffy, but I'm among friends. Say it again? Family. And family. I thank you, Rabbi Bert Visotsky, who was my teacher, professor, is my rabbi, has in many ways in my life throughout the years been my support, has gotten me through some pretty trying times, and it's my honor to call you my friend. So thank you, Bert. And wow, I'm surrounded with all sorts of family and friends and colleagues, and it feels really good to be here. My sister Mimi, Dr. Miriam Levy, my brother-in-law Paul Epstein, and my niece Lily, Becky Levy, Ethan Ravitch, was that my nieces? Did I get rid of nieces and nephews? And all my cousins. And my agent, Esther Newberg, without whom there is no book. And I have friends here from elementary school, the Bialik School, Yeshiva of Flatbush, Camp Ramah, JTS, my own cousins. You're not going to clap for yourselves? Did I catch everything? Nashuva. Okay. Okay. Are you ready? So, well, as many of you know, I grew up in Brooklyn, Borough Park, and I'm one of those people who kind of knew I wanted to be a rabbi from a very young age. I knew I wanted to be a rabbi, and everybody thought this was adorable. People kind of laughed and giggled and thought, isn't that cute? Naomi wants to be a rabbi. And I was deadly serious, but people thought it was kind of funny. And, well, my Bialik friends know that 8th grade yearbook, ambition, rabbi. And went on to Yeshiva Flatbush, where maybe it wasn't such a great thing to announce that I wanted to be a rabbi. Just, you know, not necessarily the place to tell people that. Although I did just get a letter from Rav Haramati, 3 pages in Hebrew. Went off to college and kind of during high school didn't really talk about wanting to be a rabbi. I thought that might be a source of shame. And I was one of those lucky people who didn't have to fight like so many women did and lobby and do all the things that so many of my predecessors had to do to make sure that women were going to be ordained. In my senior year of college, JTS voted to admit women. And I was lucky to be able to just come right then and be in that first class. And especially since it was something that I'd wanted since I was 3 or 4 years old, you can imagine that it was really like a homecoming. It was like completing a circle that had started at a very young age, and I loved it here. I loved it. Rabbi Joe Brody was a great mentor, and I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get enough of what I was learning and the experience of being able to question and study and learn in ways that I was never able to do earlier in my life, where I felt somehow there were certain questions that were out of bounds, and suddenly I was in an institution that said, your questions are welcome here. And exactly what we want is we want you to ask, and we want you to not check your mind at the door, but bring your mind in and be part of the discussion. And for that, I'm ever so grateful to JTS and for how much I've learned here. And yes, and when I finished here at the seminary, I went and became a congregational rabbi. not something that, if anybody knew me at the seminary, would have expected exactly. I wasn't really on that track, but somehow that's what happened to me. And I would say that probably one of the themes that kept repeating itself in my counseling as a rabbi was people who were coming to me, and they were all waiting for something. You know, it just seemed that the theme just kept repeating. My life will begin when certain pieces fall into place. There might be an infertile couple hoping to have a child. There might be somebody single praying for the bashert, you know. It might be somebody hoping to land that job, or in LA, you know, people who come with those dreams of making it in Hollywood as a writer, director, actor. So much about waiting for life to begin. And I spent so many years counseling people around that issue, around what it means to somehow find the power to live here, and to somehow find the way to not feel that this, what I'm doing now, isn't really my life, which seemed to be the theme. This thing I'm doing right now, not really my life. Maybe somebody else's life, I don't know, but it's not really my life. My life will begin when this happens. And around somewhere, my 10th year in the rabbinate or so, I was married, I had 2 wonderful children, and I had already published a book and was almost done with another book. And a couple called me, a mother called me and asked me if I would be the keynote speaker for a fundraiser for a fatal degenerative disease called ataxia telangiectasia, which is a very, very rare disease. I'd never heard of it. Most of us haven't. It only affects 5 children in 1 million. And she asked if I would come and meet her daughter, who was afflicted with this terrible, horrible disease. And of course, I agreed, and I met with the family, and their beautiful daughter was in a wheelchair, and her body had been ravaged by this disease. And of course, I agreed to speak at the fundraiser, and there were hundreds of people, upwards of 700 people filling the Beverly Hills Hotel, and let me tell you, they raised millions of dollars. And I remember that day just blessing this young woman named Rebecca and just praying that somehow they would find a cure. And I remember coming home that day and seeing my kids and holding them so tight, just grabbing them and holding them and thinking, how lucky am I? How blessed am I? Everything is good. Life is good. And 2 years passed, and it was a Shabbos dinner. I had a home full of guests, and the phone was ringing. Normally, I wouldn't have picked it up. But somehow, my legs just took me there. My legs just took me to the telephone. And I picked up the phone, and it was my daughter Noah's doctor. And he called to tell me that Noah had that very disease. And as you can imagine, time stopped. Certainly that night, time stopped. I never came out again, and I'm assuming that my guests somehow let themselves out. But time stopped. I stopped teaching, I stopped writing, I stopped counseling, I stopped lecturing, I stopped everything. And I found myself living inside waiting rooms. And if you've ever had a loved one who had a health problem, or you yourself have had a health problem, you know what it is to live your life inside waiting rooms. And at that point, many different doctors got involved in my daughter's case. And actually, my sister, Mimi, Dr. Mary Levy, is a doctor, and she in some ways got involved and became the clearinghouse for all that the doctors were saying. And one night she explained to me, she said, Naomi, it's just going to take time. And the doctors say it might take several years, perhaps 7 years, to know really what's going to be. Are things going to get progressively worse, or are they going to get better? And we just don't know, and it's just a waiting game. So there I was living inside waiting rooms, and now my life had literally become a metaphor for a waiting room, just waiting to see. And I suddenly realized that I had actually become one of those people that I had counseled over the past 10 years. One of those people saying, this can't be my life. It's impossible. This isn't my life. My life will begin when we find out that everything will be okay. My life will begin when we're not sitting inside waiting rooms. My life will begin when everything is going to be fine. This can't be my life. And there were many lessons that I learned in that period. It was a period of 7 years, and in many ways, the book that I wrote, Hope Will Find You, traces that 7-year journey. And there were many mentors, Bert being one of them, who were with me and who taught me. Sometimes there were mentors in the least likely places. It could be a homeless man or a saleswoman at a boutique, or, the waiting room itself was a great source of learning. And, recently somebody asked me, so how did you get out of the waiting room? And I think I realized that my first step out of the waiting room was the ability to embrace the blessings of the waiting room and not to look upon it as some kind of horrible place, but to see the physical waiting room and actually the wait itself as a place of learning, as a place of blessing. The kids in the waiting room out there in the real world, they stuck out, and some awful teacher was always putting them in the back row of every performance, or some awful kid was picking them last for every team in gym. But in the waiting room, these kids were strong, and they were beautiful, and they were all accepted. And the parents in the waiting rooms, we could say things to each other that you would never say out there in the real world. And it was a place of comfort, and I realized that it was a place of learning and of comfort and of support. And there were so many lessons I was learning. And, also everything that I had learned in my Torah studies, everything I had learned as a rabbi and as a Jew, there were verses that would come back to me that I'd always read in a different light, and suddenly they took on a power that I never understood before. So, I certainly remember singing Ko Mar Hashem, as just some kind of little ditty that you would sing on a Shabbos table. But what it meant to me to say the words from the prophet Jeremiah, Matzachen bamidbar, that you will find grace in the wilderness. And what that means, that we have all the capacity to find grace even in the place that we don't want to be, in the wilderness. And I started to see that the wilderness itself was a great place, a place of blessing in many ways. And I think sometimes when you're living in a wilderness, you may not be able to see how far you've come. You might even be thinking to yourself, I've come nowhere. I'm still stuck where I am. But that's because the wilderness is such a place where the vista remains the same every day, and you can't really see the progress you've been making. You can't really see just how far you've come from the place where you first got lost. And that was something that I was learning as well. Another thing that I was learning was a verse that I'd never really paid attention to before in the book of Exodus, where it says, and Moses entered the fog where God was. And I was constantly believing and thinking that the God moment would be the moment of clarity. That's what I thought the God moment would be, when the seas part, when the clouds part, that would be the God moment. And suddenly I was seeing that perhaps the God moment was the fog, that God was in the fog, and that it was okay to receive God there, right in the midst of the fog. So there were many, many lessons. And years before, when I was counseling people, before everything happened in our lives, I had always assumed I would write a self-help book about how to stop waiting and start living, but write it from a different vantage point. And now I saw that I needed to write the same book but through a different lens, to write it as my journey, and to pray that by telling my story that you and others who need to hear the story will learn the lessons with me as you just take the journey with me. So I thought I would read to you a little piece from the book about just one tiny little lesson I learned, and then we could talk a little bit. Is that okay? You good with that? Say yes. Okay. Well, since I've got family here, I thought I'd read a little piece that involves family. And I guess this little piece had to do with the fact that I had really dropped out of my professional, let's say, rabbinate. And I actually had really just kind of stopped, and I was thinking about how am I going to put even one finger in to the waters? How am I going to put like one toe into the waters? And I wasn't really sure how to do it and where to go. And this is just a little piece about that question, about standing on the outside and wanting to enter. Okay, ready? Okay. Sometimes you think you want something, but you don't want it badly enough to actually risk discomfort for it. As the Yiddish proverb goes, the cat likes the fish, but she doesn't want to wet her paws. And sometimes you want something badly, but still there are forces preventing you from taking action. Forces that keep you standing on the dock when you so want to jump in the water and start swimming. Sometimes every once in a while you get lucky, and somebody gives you a push just at the moment when you need it the most. You're standing there hesitating on the dock, and someone just pushes you in the water, not in a cruel way, but in a way of caring. Thinking of my brother Danny always calls to mind that word, push. He's 8 years older than I am, and the two stories I remember most when I look back on my own childhood with him are both times when he pushed me. The first story, I was 8, he was 16. My sister Mimi was visiting Israel at the time, and she mailed me the most beautiful silver ring with my Hebrew name engraved on it. I was so excited to receive this present from her, but when I tried on the ring, I saw that it was too small for me. Danny said, "Let me see that ring." He looked at it. "It's not too small for you." He took my hand and he pushed that ring on my finger. "You see, it fits," he said. But it didn't take very long for me to realize that I couldn't get that ring off. "Danny, the ring's stuck. I can't get it off." "Nonsense," he said. He pulled and he tugged, nothing. Then he took soap, nothing. Ice cubes, nothing. Oil, nothing. Soon my fingers start to turn purple and start swelling up. Danny starts to turn white. Then my mom came home. It was 7 o'clock on a Friday night in Borough Park. And I remember walking with my mom from store to store until we found the single jeweler who was still open, who had to cut that ring right off my finger. And my mom still has that ring. She saved it all these years. Danny's first push? Not that helpful. 9 years passed. Now I was 17 and Danny was 25 and in his 4th year of medical school. A year and a half earlier, our father had been murdered, and my 3 older siblings were all adults who had moved out of the house years before. A house once full of noise and laughter and celebration and music and 4 kids running around with 2 parents madly in love had fallen silent. And now it was just me and my mom living all alone in our pain and in our mourning. And it was my senior year of high school, and I was supposed to be thinking about moving out and going off to college, but I couldn't think at all, and my mom was in no state of mind to help me. There was no college tour for me, nobody telling me where to apply. And of course, there were so many mixed emotions. My mom wanted me to go off to school, but she also wanted me at home. I was her baby, her comfort. I wanted to leave her, but I couldn't bear the guilt of leaving my mother to live all by herself alone. As a mom myself now, I understand what my mother was going through. Last year, my son Adi decided to go for a semester abroad in Israel. He was only in 10th grade, only 15 years old, and part of me wanted him to go and have a great learning experience, but a much bigger part of me wanted him to stay at home. In the end, Adi went, and I missed him so much that I took to wearing his sweatshirts and t-shirts every single day. Noah, who's a total fashion queen, told me, "Mom, you've got to stop wearing Adi wear." One day, she said, "Mom, if someone gave me a choice between what you're wearing right now and death, I'd pick death." And she even wrote away to the TV show What Not to Wear. I got the email from them. She wrote, "Help. You've got to help my mom. She only wears my brother's t-shirts. Teach her how to dress." So now we flip back to my senior year in high school. I could so see the possibility of never leaving my mother. I could so understand the fate of the unlucky child in a family who somehow gets sucked into the vortex of a family problem and can't seem to ever be free of it. Right across the street from my childhood home, there was a family just like that, the Kiselewskis. Mama Kiselewski was in her 90s, and she lived with her 3 grown children who were all in their 60s. The 3 children, Anna, Harry, and Florence, had never left home. Maybe I would never leave home. It was December 29th, the day before my brother Danny's wedding. He drove down from Boston with Sue, his bride-to-be, and there was so much to take care of just the day before the wedding, so many plans to finalize. There was table seating, dealing with the rabbi, the florist, the caterer, and on and on. Danny came into the living room and he said to me, "Hey, kiddo, how are those applications going?" I sat there frozen in silence. He repeated, "How's it going with the applications?" I looked at him with a blank stare. I didn't do it. I don't know where to apply. I don't know what to say. I didn't apply anywhere. Naomi, when are they due? January 1st? The next thing I knew, Danny was rummaging around in the basement. And then he came up with my mom's baby blue Brother manual typewriter. He set up a card table in the middle of our living room, and my soon-to-be sister-in-law, Sue, was sitting at that table with the typewriter, and Danny was pacing back and forth and dictating as she typed. Together, they filled out all the forms, and then Danny wrote my college essay. It was all about recombinant DNA. I tell you, I didn't understand a word of it. I just sat on the couch like a lost sheep. This went on all day long, the day before Danny's wedding. Danny dictating, Sue typing, me watching. By nightfall, all the applications were sealed and stamped and ready to go. And Danny never said to me, "What's wrong with you?" Or "Why did you wait so long?" He never said anything, really. But in his eyes, I understood what he was trying to say to me. He was saying, "Naomi, go. It's time for you to go. It's time to start living. I'm giving you permission to go. Go out that door, go to college, learn, live your life, have fun, go." Danny's first push, not that helpful. His second push saved my life. Remembering Danny and his push, I thought about how hard it is to leave a world you're familiar with. It's hard to press on into an unknown future. But living on the dock isn't really living, is it? So Danny got me into Cornell University. For some time, I was ashamed to tell anyone that he'd filled out my application and written my essay for me. But I'm okay with it now. I'm okay with the way the whole story is unfolding still. Danny likes to say that he didn't get into Cornell the first time he applied, when he was in high school, but he got in the second time. And I've tried to repay the favor. When it was time for all 3 of his children's bar and bat mitzvahs, I helped each one of them with their speeches, and I delivered the sermon at each of their services. And when each one of his kids applied to college, I helped each one of them with their essays. Sometimes you get lucky, and somebody gives you a push at the moment when you need it the most. Every new life begins with something as simple as a push. That's all for now. So, new, do you want to ask me any questions? Don't be shy. Be brave. Yes?
So, I have a slight advantage of almost finished your book. I have, I think, a chapter left. So, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions from the book, but I hope it doesn't ruin the book. So, I'm assuming that many people probably have read it already as well, or if not, this won't give away anything, I guess. But the thing that's really quite profound and beautiful and moving and surprising to me in this book is actually how much I was taught by your daughter's story through her own words. I thought it was wonderful that you gave us so much of her writing. I could see a little modeling there. Watching her mother write, she starts writing herself. But that was really what hit me over the head. I think I got to that spot yesterday or something where she started talking about herself and the lessons that she learned. So I just want to say that was really quite terrific. I have a second question, but...
Wait, yeah, you know what? I actually forgot to tell you about the book's title. So I'd like to do that with your permission. Noah was 12, and as you can imagine, there was a time when I didn't know if she would make it to her bat mitzvah, or she might be in a wheelchair by her bat mitzvah. And here she's 12, and it's time to teach her for her bat mitzvah. She's growing stronger every day. And I decided that the best way that I wanted to teach her was to teach her in bed every night. So every night in bed, I would crawl into bed with her, and we'd pull up the blankets and have 2 pillows propped up, and I would teach her. And we studied her trope, and we studied her Torah portion, and we studied her Haftarah. And her parsha was Ki Teitzeh. And the Haftarah there is one of the beautiful prophecies of hope from the book of Isaiah. And one night, I said to Noah, I said, honey, what does your Haftarah mean to you? And she said to me, she said, Mom, I think what it means is if you don't like your life, if you try really hard, you can find hope. And then suddenly, she corrected herself. And she looked at me and she said, no, Mom, hope will find you. And I couldn't breathe when Noah said that. Because for so many years, I'd been trying to hold on to hope. I'd been trying to grasp onto hope. And here my daughter was telling me that I didn't need to try so hard. I didn't need to hold on so desperately, but quite the opposite. I needed to relax and let hope in. And you know, hope will find you sounded so familiar to me. It sounded like a biblical verse. I couldn't remember, where have I heard that before? And I realized that it very much reminded me of the 23rd Psalm, which we say all the time, Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, which we usually translate as, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. But it's really not a great translation because in the Hebrew it's so much more emphatic. It's surely goodness and mercy will chase after me, will pursue me all the days of my life. And I believe Noah was saying that hope would find me, and not only me, that hope would find all of us, that hope was looking for us. And the real challenge in life wasn't to hang on for hope. The real challenge in life was to stop long enough and to open up wide enough to let it in. So thank you for raising that. Any other questions? Yes. What are you making? Okay, I like it. So did Noah read the book? Yes. Me and Noah, just like we had done for her bat mitzvah, me and Noah read the book in bed out loud. I read it out loud to her about 5 times. And my concern in reading it and making sure that there wasn't anything in the book that she was uncomfortable with, anything that she felt was revealing or in any way problematic for her. What I thought was fascinating was, she actually was lobbying for more, more Noah. She goes like, "What happened to me now? What are we talking about Danny for? Where am I in this? But something else happened, which was Noah. Well, I think has a great ear for narrative, for storytelling. So whenever she would lose interest, or whenever Noah would say, "Mom, you're boring me," I knew I would just put a line right there on that page because I knew I had lost the power of the story. And if I lost Noah, I knew I would lose something very important, which is the ability to just share the journey and not get too smart with people. Just keep it real and keep it true and keep it a story. So thank you for asking, and yes, she's read it many times. Yes. Noah's incredible. She's 14, and she just went to the Matisyahu concert Saturday night. She goes to a school for kids with learning disabilities, and she just lobbied in her school to start a school newspaper. And she has really, in the scheme of things, minor physical disabilities. She has hypotonia, which is low muscle tone. She has ataxia, which is a balance disorder. And she's great. She's great. I guess when I think about the ataxia, I would say another thing that Noah taught me was how to pray. In those times that people have asked me, "Did you have a crisis of faith?" And I think something more like a paralysis of faith. And I remember not knowing how to pray, not knowing what to say, and how ironic, because at that very time, I had just finished writing a book called Talking to God, and now suddenly, I just didn't know what to say to God. And I remember one morning, Noah was in 2nd grade, and she woke up and she had a terrible bout of ataxia. And ataxia is an inability to keep your balance. So she would stand up and fall over. Or she didn't even have to stand up. She was just in a seated position. She couldn't stay upright. She would just fall over. And she couldn't eat her breakfast because she couldn't sit up. And I had to literally hold her up and spoon feed her. And I looked at her and I thought, I said to her, "Honey, I don't think you can go to school today. How do you send your child to school like that?" So she looked at me and she said, "No, Mom, I'm going to go pray and it'll be okay." And so Noah picked herself up and she held onto the wall, and she took herself to her bedroom just by holding onto the wall. And then she was in her bedroom and she was holding on to the dresser, and she started to pray. She started to say her morning prayers, Modani, her morning prayers. And I was watching in the hallway because I didn't want her to see me watching her. But I was just watching, and I saw something happened to her. It was almost like this pillar of strength. There was just almost this strength that was traveling up her body, as if somebody had put a pillar right down the middle of her. And she became tall and erect, and her head held high. And when she was finished praying, she walked out of her bedroom with perfect balance and perfect posture. And she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I'm ready for school." And she was. And what was she teaching me? You know, not that prayer is a miracle cure, might not cure every malignancy, but that we all have the power to pray for strength and to receive it. That's what she was teaching me. And a new way to pray. A new way to pray. How are we doing with time, Bert?
Very well.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I've read all three of your books, and it's a hard question to answer in 30 seconds. But could you share with me how these experiences changed your theology, and how Judaism influenced what you believe today?
You can do 4 to 7.
You know, one of my favorite, I put little proverbs, little Yiddish proverbs at the front of every chapter, and I don't know, I think one of the favorite ones of mine was if God were living on earth, people would break his windows. Even though I personally never call God a he, I didn't want to change the proverb, as an aside. I've certainly had my struggles with God. I've certainly had my challenges with God. And I guess in this particular book, well, I'd say, sure, I've been on a journey with my writing and how I've understood God and how personal prayer has also transformed my relationship with God. But I talk in the book about a certain moment where I was sitting in a Starbucks and this verse came to me. Where are you coming from and where are you going? Where are you coming from and where are you going? And I knew this verse very well because it's something that an angel asks Hagar when she's lost in the desert. And I thought a lot about that scene where Hagar is this slave, this concubine of Avram's, and now she's pregnant with his child and she's been cast off like nothing, like garbage. And this angel of God finds her on the road and asks her that question, Hagar, where are you coming from and where are you going? And then when the angel talks to her and explains to her, listen to me, you're going to be the mother of a great people. Trust me. Go back. The child that you're carrying is going to be a leader of men, and you're going to be a matriarch. And I'd never quite seen it before, and I never quite noticed before a few things. Hagar turns to God and says, Ata el roi, you are the God who sees me. Other people saw a slave. God saw a matriarch. And she's the first person in the Torah, maybe the only person, who gives God a new name. Usually God goes around giving people a new name. And here it was this handmaid who gives God a new name. And what a powerful name. You're the God who sees me. And to me, that's a great theology. You know, we might not always see ourselves in the full strength of what we're capable of. And certainly other people might not see us in the full strength of who we are. But El Roi does. God sees us in our full potential. And if we could only see ourselves in that light, and what a blessing it is, just that, to be seen, to be known. And to me, that's a very powerful theology, that God sees us, that God knows who we are, really, the holiness of who we are. And, obviously, if we can only see that in others, what an incredible world this would be, right? If we could only see it with those eyes, too. So I guess that's just, okay. Any final question? Cousin Cindy? Thank you. Cindy, I just want you to know. So let me end with a blessing to you. May God bless you and protect you. May God bless you with wisdom and vision. May you dream great dreams, and may you see them come true. May you be blessed with courage and the power to be bold. May you be blessed with kindness, compassion, and hope. May you be blessed with love and a loving, resilient heart. May your smile be contagious, your joy outrageous. May you shine and light up the world. Amen. Thanks, everybody.